Good morning. So this is kind of a different type of a video, but I just wanted to walk you through a process that I'm working on because why not? This is a uniquely you dress form. Picked it up at a yard sale, and when I grabbed it, I've already played with it if you can't tell. When I grabbed it, it was very small. It was like for a very, very small person, and I almost didn't get it because of that, but you know, a dress form is a dress form and I can always have a use for it. So I brought it home and I realized, I started taking it apart, as you do, and I realized some things about these guys. And the first thing is they had two layers. There's like this underlayer here, which is like a duck type fabric. And then there's an overlayer, which is like, well, it's not muslin, it's sturdier than muslin. It's like a very strong broadcloth, okay? And they both had really, really big seam allowances. So I'm thinking, with 1-inch seam allowances and their princess seams everywhere, why can't I just bump this up in size and make it fit me? So I started playing with that, playing with the underlayer, and then I got the idea that maybe someone else might want to see that. So that's why I've turned on the camera now. So basically, if I take this off, you can see I was just kind of playing with adding batting because the body of this thing is made out of foam, okay? It's just like foam rubber. And it was compressed. I don't know the original size, but it was compressed. And I had some quilt batting around, and I still have more, so I just started putting batting on there. And I actually think I'm going to wrap some more around the back and things, but you know, you can just layer batting wherever you see fit. And I think that the process that I'm going to do with this could also work with, like, you know those My Double dress forms with the little dials and everything? I used those for years. They're not really great for sewing because you can't pin into them. They're kind of wobbly. They just have some issues. But what I did, my last one, is I basically did this kind of process where I covered it with swaths of batting, and then I pulled a t-shirt over it, and then I made that t-shirt fit by taking it in. And it wasn't perfect because it was a stretch knit and everything, but it was close enough and I could pin into it. I think that doing it the way I'm going to do with this one would work better. So, with that in mind, the first thing I want to show you is the outer layer. And again, this is the brand of the one, if you're ever looking for them. You might even be able to buy these to your size and then just add it to your own dress form. I haven't thought about that. That's an option. So anyway, I took it apart. You can see it's basically a princess seamed shaper kind of thing, okay? And I was just playing with it. I took it apart because the thread was dry rotted, so I had to reseam it anyway. And I added a little tape right here, which is going to lower that bust point, which is, you know, important for me. And at the same time, I could let out these seams, all right? Hang on just one second. Okay, so this is what I'm thinking. If you have a basic dress form, and by basic what I mean is you have a sturdy stand, you have something that is in some form of a body shape on top of it. Whether it's made out of plastic or foam or whatever, some kind of a body shape that you can wrap thin layers of foam rubber and then thin layers of batting around. You know, it doesn't have to be pretty, just wrap it around and around so that you have a big muff type shape that is roughly a little bit bigger than what you think your shape is, so that you can tighten it up, okay? That's what I'm thinking. If you can start with that, and that could be a My Double dress form, it could be a mannequin, kind of like my other one, or something to start with. And then I'm thinking we could follow the same idea that this Uniquely You has, where you make a undergarment, basically. And I noticed that this one was a little bit bigger than the final one. So there was the big fluffy, this one cinched it in some, and this one fine-tuned it, is what it felt like. So with having your big dress form, whatever it is, all wrapped up in puffy, okay? And I'll make mine all wrapped up in puffy before we go on. Then I'm thinking that we can make these types of pieces by using certain types of patterns. And I just pulled this one out because it has, you know, take off the sleeves, of course, but it has the princess seams. You could very easily turn the center, which is on a fold on here, into a seam by just adding a seam allowance and cutting it that way. And then in the back, okay, like on this pattern, it looks like it really starts to flare just below hip level, which is great because a dress form usually starts to flare there, so it won't be too much alteration. And this is made for a 22-inch zipper down the back. Now, what makes these things so easy to deal with is they have super long separating zippers, all right? Now, let me see how long these things are, but you want to make them at least as long as your dress form is going to be. So this is about a 33-inch long separating zipper. You can buy them. If they don't carry them in your local store, you can order them, you know, order it off wherever, eBay, Waywalk, whatever. But you can get these big, long separating zippers. You can need two of them, one for your base garment and one for your fine-tuning garment, okay? So what I'm thinking is that you can use your base garment, which is not intended to be a perfect fit, kind of like your muslin for making this one. So by making this garment, I would suggest making it as is, you know. Pick a size that you think is definitely at least going to fit your smallest place with a little bit of ease in the other places, and put the separating zipper in the back, all right? And what I'm thinking, again, this is the preliminary thinking mode, is that you're going to need someone to zip up your back. You will need that, but once you get it on, you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror and pinch different spots. And say I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and this is my center front right here. It has these two little holes where the bust is. And I can pinch, I can pinch that much. Well, then while I'm wearing it, you know, I can pinch it and either pin it or mark it or something, you know. And that way I know that my waist is that much too big twice, you know, because it's doubled. And then do the same thing with your hips and all the way down, okay? That's how I would do it on a seam where I can see. And center front is easy enough for me. Once you take it off and you can work on it nice and flat, then I can measure, okay, I need to take, say, 4 inches in. Well, you have, you know, not counting the center back. We're not going to count that because that's where your zipper is, and just leave it alone. You don't want to adjust that. But you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seams. So you can easily take quite a bit in 7 seams. You know what I mean? You could just do the math. So say if there are 4 inches you need to take in, there's 7 seams. 4 divided by 7 gives you a fraction, and that's how much you take in at each seam, okay? And I would just spread it out evenly all the way around in general. Sew it up with a basting stitch. Try it back on and see how it works. When you think that it's pretty darn close, put it on your dress form and zip it up and see how that looks. So that's my first step. So again, that's my first step. And you can kind of see on here where I was making marks and everything, and I wasn't actually fitting this on me, I was fitting it on my other dress form. But I am going to try this as soon as I can get someone in here to zip me up the back. And again, if you're looking for it, I think that this is still a current pattern. If not, what you're looking for is something that has princess seams. And on this, the princess seams go up to the shoulders. On this, they go into the arm. I don't think it really makes that much difference, but you know, just find something with princess seams. I also like this because it has a seam right here. So if you do need to shorten or lengthen for a shorter waist or a longer waist or whatever, you can do it at that point. So that's my thought. I'm going to go ahead and actually try on my base, because I have not even gotten into sewing this yet. I had to wash it because it was kind of dusty, but it still has all the original seam allowances and everything in here. You can see it was just kind of falling apart because the threads had dry rotted. But I'm excited about this, so I'll be right back. All right, so I actually got it on myself, and I was able to zip it up most of the way because my hips are too big for the size that I sewed this at. So it's good to learn. So here's my takeaway for trying on their one, okay? It's possible to try on your own dress form dummy, which is actually a really cool thing. Now, this neckline is way, way, way up high. It is just barely at the base of your neck, and you want it that way. Okay, you want it as high as you can try it on, basically. So like this pattern has a low neckline, we'll need to bump that up here, okay? But the other thing is, when you're putting on your zipper and it is separating, make sure that you put it on so the separating part is up here at the neck. All right, that's going to be important. So you want to be able to zip it and unzip it from the outside and hook it together right behind your neck. But by trying this one on, I'm able to get a good idea. Now, it is also extremely important that the fabric that you choose is super, super durable. And so, you know, this is a lot more sturdy than a typical broadcloth. It's like a lightweight duck, I would call it. So it's the type that you would use in like a windbreaker type thing, an old school windbreaker, if that makes any sense. So what I did while I had it on is I had my pin in my hand, and you know, it was extremely tight here, but I got it, it fit me up to my waist. At my waist, I could tell I was going to need to take it in about an inch, but I was able to mark a line at exactly where my waist is, which is helpful. And also down here, I wrote it upside down, but it says +4, because I needed to make sure at this level where I drew that line that I was adding 4 inches to all of this down here. Now I have some pretty big seam allowances, so that's not a big deal. I can add that 4 inches. So I was debating on scrapping this thing and making a totally new one, but I think I'm just going to alter this one, but the same principle holds. So you're going to see me walk through it, but the same principle is going to hold if you're going to want to start from scratch and look for it. And there may be a better pattern than this one to use. I just grabbed it because it's what I had in my stash. But if you can find one with a higher neck, like a sheath dress type of pattern, a fitted sheath dress, because I want to show you something. In addition to these princess seams, it also has a side dart. And oh, I don't have one here. Well, even this one that we just did, honestly, the bodice for this one could, if you got it tailored really, really closely, it could be a good starting point for this. So anyway, all that aside, I am going to pull apart some of these seams down here, add in 4 inches, and make them coast up to where my waistline mark is, and I'll be right back. Okay, so this is very awkward, but I'm going to see if I can show you. I am actually trying on my dress form, okay? Now, I'll show you what's good and what's bad and what I'm going to do. First thing is I was able to zip the whole thing, so yay, that's a good thing. My waist, turn sideways here. Okay, so my waist, I think I'm going to need to shorten just a little bit. Not a whole lot. It looks like about 1/2 inch at the side, but it may be a little more. Actually, I'm going to hold off on that until I make one other adjustment. I'm going to lower my bust a little bit more. You see up here in the shoulder, well, maybe you can't. Up here in the shoulder, I added a strip. There it is. I added a 1-inch strip. Okay, and my hope was that that would help to give some more room to lower this. But see, it's a little too high still, and I'm thinking that I need to adjust this just a bit more. But it is pretty darn close. It's actually a whole lot closer than my other dress form is. And even if I just used it as it is right now, it's doable. You know, I can see my little paunch and everything, but that's okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you how it is to try it on. Now, the neckline, if you can see, it comes to right here. It's like, here's that little indent. It's just right there. So you want your neckline pretty high. But actually for our first run, I might just use this and go ahead and try it on my dress form and see how it fits. Okay, so this is her in all her glory. She is all foam rubber. Her entire body is foam rubber on a pole, basically. And, you know, it's not pretty foam rubber, but it is what it is. There was originally 2 strings that came out from between her bosoms, and that would go through those little grommet holes. So you can tie it in and cinch it in, but one of them just snapped off, and this one's pretty weak also, so I'm probably just going to take it off. I'm not really concerned with making sure that I have a deep cleavage. I'm more wanting this shape, you know, so that's fine with me. But before I get started with all of this, what I want to do is cover up her neck, her ugly little neck. You know, we love her dearly. Let me raise her up here. We love her, but she's got an ugly little nub up here. And so I just have some lining fabric that I am just going to drape over. And I have some, I can't tip this, little pins. There you go. I have some little pins, and I'm just going to use those to hold everything together since she is foam. So here's the thing. If you have a my double or a hard dress form that you're going to be using, get some foam rubber, and you can get it in fairly narrow sheets, and, you know, have a Michelangelo sculpting kind of day and just wrap it around and see what you can come up with. It doesn't actually have to be perfect, because on top of the foam rubber is going to be batting, and on top of the batting is going to be a thick layer, and hopefully on top of that thick layer is going to be a final layer. So it shouldn't be that bad. All right, and this is not perfect, but you know what? It's going to cover up that little nubby head, and I don't have to worry about foam rubber possibly falling apart or making crumbs or anything. And if you find one of these and the foam is falling apart, well, don't even mess with it. Just put new on top of it, because once foam rubber starts falling apart, it's a mess. Drop the pen. Okay, so I'm just doing something kind of like this, just to hold my cover in place. And I'm gonna cover up my side over here where my little arm is going to be peeking out. I'll do the same thing, so give me a minute. I'll put some pins around here and on the other side, and then we'll get started wrapping her up in batting. All right, so got her little arm sides covered and her neck is covered. Now remember, she needed a 33-inch zipper to go the whole way, all the way down. So what I have done is I have cut 2 long pieces of batting that are a little longer than 33 inches. And I am just going to wrap it all the way around her. and pin it together in the back, and then just kind of attach it up here at the shoulders and things like that. So in the back here, where it's just kind of meeting, I'm just going to overlap it where I can up here, right at the base of her neck. Stick a pin in there, and in the front, right here at the base of her neck, stick a pin there. I'm going to wrap the top. Now I will be cutting around where the armhole goes, but for right now I'm just going to kind of pin it up to the top of my shoulder here so that it'll hold in place so I can see where I need to cut for that armhole. Oops, I got 2 pins there. Okay, so now I can look at it and say, okay, well here's my arm, so I'm going to stick a pin right underneath here, like that, and from the front. And it's okay if it gets bunchy. That's just fine. Actually, if you see places that are going to need more padding than others, like say you have a bigger chest than hips or something, and you're going to know you're going to need at least 2 more layers in the chest than you do in the hips. I'm going to be putting 2 big layers. So this one, then once I have this one pinned on really well, that's the time to go get all your little extra pieces and make multiple layers wherever you see fit, okay? So let me go ahead and get her situated on this one for right now, and I'll be right back. So I am just chopping down until I get below that little armhole area, chopping around here and around there. Okay, and then I can just kind of tack these 2 down, and I have this. So like back here, okay, I've got a lot of extra stuff back here, and I don't necessarily need so much back here. I actually need more up front, but what I can do is just kind of work it in. I don't want one big chunk. I'm just kind of, this is an art. We are sculpting, okay? So it's kind of like draping, kind of like stuffing a chicken. It's what it is, okay? Once you're comfortable with it, I'm going to put more pins just to get it attached, but I'm not necessarily making a form-fitted thing here, just keeping it from where it wants to fall off. Then I'll put on my little pieces. Okay, so now I'm going to add her larger cup size and lower chest. You saw where she was before. I need her to be a little bit lower. So I'm taking a long piece and I'm folding it in half most of the way, but leaving a little bit on top that's not, so I can kind of ease it in there. And again, just putting a couple pins just to kind of hold it in place. And it's just doubling up a little bit where I know my body is different than hers. And right here in the center, there's nothing really to pin it to, so I'm having issues there. So I'm just going to pin on top of her chest up here. Okay, and you can see it's very loose. I'm just pinning it enough that it's going to stay on, because I can wrap my whole piece around this way and kind of hug her and push it in that way. And I also know my backside is a lot rounder than hers was. So I'm going to add some back there too. So we're going to add a little rear right back here. Might add a couple layers of that. So I'll do it the same way, just put some pins. So I put extra padding in my rear, extra padding on the chest, and now I'm going to put a second big wrap around her to try to hold some of that stuff in here. And I can already see that this one doesn't wrap double nearly as far as the other one, so I got more room in there, so that's good. I mean, I don't know if it's good, but it works, you know? So I'm going to do the same thing where I just kind of pulling it a little bit together, a little more together on this wrap than the other one, but still not worrying too much. And I'm actually not going to cut the armholes on this one until after I get my sewn piece over it. Okay, let me just pin this chest on up here. Okay, let me go get my piece. So I'm just gonna put it over her, push her shoulders down so it kind of fills in here. And I am expecting to have a hard time zipping this together. And that's because I'm going to be compressing a whole lot of stuff here. But even if I could just get this dress form to fit this, I think that that's a win. So before I try to zip it, I'm pulling it straight down in the front to make sure I'm at the right height. Okay. Now in the back, it starts zipping up here at the neckline. I'm going to come down a little bit. Actually, it'd be easier with two people maybe. I'm going to cinch in, zip it down. Just scoot her out of here. There, you can see a little bit better. So you can see her wideness in there. And so this is why you need a really, really strong cloth. And it's also why the dry rotted threads just evaporated. But oh my gosh, this is looking so good. Okay. There she is. That's actually really good. Okay, so just looking at her straight on, it's on here, but I can see that she's kind of flat. So instead of taking her off again, I just have some little pieces that I am just going to try to shove in there. Hang on, I got to take my rings off because they're getting snagged on the batting. You know, it's like junior high and you're stuffing your bra again on very public video. You just admitted to the world that you stuffed your bra in junior high. Now you're having second doubts, but anyhow, I'm just going to keep doing this for a little bit until I can kind of get the shape that I feel comfortable with. And while I'm stuffing it, I can just kind of push it down a little bit so I can get more of the shape that I want. Look at her, she's already starting to look kind of like me. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. Let me finish stuffing her and I'll be right back. Okay, so at this point I actually feel really good about the top. It's actually really firm where I need it and everything. My only thing that I'm a little bit iffy on is down here. It covers it, but I'm a little bit looser. So I think that I'm going to unzip up to this point, wrap some more batting around it, and then zip it back up. So just up to this waist area, I'm going to peel her skirt up for a minute. Just because if I'm doing a straight skirt or something, and I really want to make sure it's going to go over my hips, I want her hips to match my hips. So I just wrapped one more layer all the way around, and we'll see. And I'm just tucking it in here, you know, I'm not even pinning it, I'm just kind of tucking it in. Pull her down, and it's like I gave her a bustle. Is that what I look like? All right, so I'm gonna cinch her in a little more again. And pull her down. So that's a little bit better. I have a little more firmness right here. Down here at the very bottom, that doesn't really matter to me because it's usually right here that you're fitting. This is more like walking space down here. So there you go. I mean, even if I just left it at this, that is a very decent, workable dress form. So the only changes that I made when I got it, you know, unzip this, hand wash it because it was falling apart. I did add a strip at the shoulder just to give more room because it was a little going to be too tight, especially around the armhole, and this I needed to be able to come forward a little bit. So that's what this strip was. And that's just a piece of bias hem binding up there. Actually, no, it's not. That's a piece of muslin. I take it back. That's a strip of muslin that I put up there. So just did that, opened up all of the seam allowances, measured what they would be, got a rough guess of what my measurements are. I should bend down here. Got a rough guess of what my measurements are, sewed it back together, and then that's where we picked up this morning. So you saw how easy it was. So if you have a dummy that's a hard dummy, like a mannequin that's like this, that's hard, but it's a very small size, just do this. Because these are like a hard styrofoam, so you can pin into them. You don't need to wrap them with foam rubber. You can just wrap it with batting. And you can usually find mannequins all over the place. So anyhow, I hope that helps you. Hang on a second, let me go back to the table. So at this point, I'm actually gonna hold off putting the second layer on top of it. I think that layer is going to do everything I need. I'm going to keep this one because it's good for a backup or it's good for a pattern, but I just wanted to show you the way that they put their zipper on because it needs to be very strong. All that they did, it's a very exposed zipper. You know, they're not worrying about hiding those teeth. Is folded. Come on. Okay, so you can see that the fabric is folded under about 1 inch and all the seam allowances are at least 1 inch. So if you're cutting this out of a pattern, give yourself extra big seam allowances to play with. It's just folded under 1 inch, laid next to the teeth and zipped all the way and sewn all the way down. And they even left a tail. Come on. They even left a tail down here at the end, you know. So it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. So anyhow, just an option, you know, sometimes when you're trying to find a dress form that fits you, it can be really frustrating. Because I know I went down that road and I was looking into the customized one and they're crazy expensive and a long wait time. And then there's the ones where you can buy certain pads that are supposed to fit certain areas of your body and put them on your dress form. But even those pads, just to buy a set of pads to put on a different dress form is like a couple $100 for foam. And but if you look, there's usually my double dress forms or display mannequins or things like that all over the place. And if it's as simple, and we know how to sew, right? If it's as simple as making a fitted sheath, trying on that sheath, taking it in wherever you need to so it's like skin tight, and putting it on a foam dummy, then we're set. And we're going to save a boatload of money. And if we gain weight or lose weight, all we have to do is take in or let out a seam allowance. And it's not like one of those customizable ones where it's a one-time shot. And that was another problem I had is, what if I spend, $900 on a dress form that fits me perfectly today, and by some miracle of chance I lose 20 pounds? What do I do? Is that waste? So a system like this, I think, is a lot more user-friendly, So anyhow, I just wanted to share that. I hope it's useful. See you later. Bye-bye.